And this is more of an update with what's happening to Julian Assange. We've talked about this time and time again in the past about, the threat of him being arrested and what it means for independent journalism on all spectrums, whether it's conservative or, democratic or liberal, you name it. So, Paul, what's going on with Julian Assange?
So, a little bit of context because this has been going on for a while. Julian Assange was arrested a little less than a month ago for failing to report for bail for the investigation that was being held in Sweden for sexual misconduct allegations. That investigation was eventually dropped, but the bail charges remained. He claimed that he was I think very accurately, he was seeking asylum in the London embassy, the Ecuadorian embassy in London, for fear that these charges were not really made in good faith. They weren't really trying to get him for these sexual assault allegations. Rather, they were using these charges as pretext to extradite him to the United States, where he would face Espionage Act charges for the release and disclosure of the Bradley Manning, then Bradley Manning, now Chelsea Manning, releases when she was in a position of access. And so there are extradition charges with relating to did he offer any help with computer hacking in those charges. This is not the extradition hearing that just happened, so that's scheduled to happen tomorrow. This hearing is the charges for failing to respond to bail. He received 50 weeks in prison for that. He's getting his extradition charges tomorrow. Caitlin Johnstone, in the article that we've pointed out, we've posted, mentions that this is about twice the sentencing that a man got in the UK for failing to appear for bail after a manslaughter charge with a speedboat. So he actually killed a person, and there is an active investigation against him, and failed to appear for bail and was sentenced to 20-some weeks in prison. So double that charge for exposing the secrets of the military, or the United States military in particular. This really goes to show the close ties that the UK has with the US in basically persecuting journalism in this capacity, because the UK has dirt on its hands too, blood on its hands as well. So I expect to hear a lot more about this once we get the extradition hearing tomorrow. But this is sort of the first stage, the first appearance we've seen in court from Julian Assange since he was arrested. And the other appearances right after the fact, we had very, very little access. It happened very quickly. He didn't even have access to his lawyers for quite some time. This is the first real hearing that we've gotten. And again, we expect another one tomorrow.
I appreciate the context in the speedboat, manslaughter accident, because when I first read the article, I was like, gosh, 50 weeks for not showing up for bail is kind of crazy. And I did know that those charges were dropped. So that brought up for me a lot of confusion, because it does seem really over the top for something like, not answering, not showing up for bail. Not to mention, there's a whole other conversation here to be had about bail, and holding people in prison on bail, which is something that I've personally fought against myself in the city of Chicago. So that was another thing that came up for me when reading this article, that, to be held in prison for not paying bail is essentially, in a way, a debtor's prison. Now, that may not be what we're thinking about when addressing the Julian Assange story, because we don't imagine that Julian Assange is not paying bail due to the fact that he doesn't have the money. Although, do we know what the bail was posted at? How much?
I don't know.
I was looking for that too. I didn't see it.
There's a lot of odd stories surrounding, especially in regards to what's happening to Julian Assange and really what's impacting him. Because first and foremost, the charges against him, as far as I'm concerned, as far as we know, they have been dropped. Is that essentially?
They were never resulted in charges. It was an investigation based on the allegations that were made. Now, if you want to go down the giant rabbit hole that is law and how it applies in rape and sexual misconduct cases in Sweden, that's a rabbit hole we can go down. But the basic facts of it are, one of the two women recanted her allegation. The other woman had an extremely suspicious allegation to begin with, has not retracted it. But basically the Swedish government decided there really isn't anything to investigate here. And so they dropped the investigation, which is as good as dropping charges. Charges were never filed. So from a legal standpoint, there really is nothing left there. If you were going to get into epistemological, did anything actually happen in that case? We can have that conversation. But from a legal standpoint, it's run its course.
Right. Absolutely. You know, and it's a sticky conversation to get in, especially this day and age with Me Too, like, you know, believing the women and that sort of thing. And maybe something happened with those women and maybe they didn't. But absolutely, if there are no charges and there's no investigation, then there's nothing happening inside of that. And so now he's being charged with 50 weeks, 50 weeks for not.
So just shy of a year.
Yeah.
Right.
So then I think as a final note, look, we have to follow through with the story, but more importantly, I think all of Americans and anyone who likes independent journalism or a concept of a free press, people should be actively involved and people should be wondering, how is this thing going to turn out? Because now that he's in jail, well, what does that mean also for extradition? Will he be sent to the United States? And we talked about this last Saturday, where he was under where the British government won't extradite a citizen or an individual to another country if there is the possibility of a death penalty, and that's here in the United States, especially with the idea that he let out information, top secret information, and let's face it, the establishment is concerned about somebody like that still being around, and we just can't have. I guess according to the neoliberal system, they can't have somebody like that out there, and it's going to again discredit the establishment media as well. So we got to follow through with this story, but more importantly, I think we should really make sure that he remains free, and we really get down to the bottom of really what's happening to Julian Assange.
So one more thing to add to this, because we likely won't have a chance to talk in real time as it happens, because it probably will happen tomorrow early in the morning. We'll wake up to this news because the hearing is happening in London. But if he is extradited to the United States, John Kiriakou is on record saying, I don't think Julian is looking at 5 years in prison. I think he's probably looking at 50 years in prison. He's a CIA whistleblower that has experience in this. He says, I think there are many more charges to be considered for Julian. I would expect a superseding indictment possibly to include espionage charges. And he points out that there's simply no such thing as a fair trial in the Eastern District of Virginia where he will go. No one has ever been able to beat charges on the Espionage Act if they go to the Eastern District of Virginia. No national security defendant has ever won a case in the EDVA. Kiriakou told RT on Assange's arrest, in my case, I asked the judge to declassify 70 documents I needed to defend myself. He denied all 70 documents, and so I had literally no defense for myself and was forced to take the plea.
Okay. Well, all right. So, Paul, you had the final note on that story, and we have to follow through with it.